afternoon. My name is Brian Flaherty. I'm this year's president of the Missoula Organization of Realtors. On behalf of the organization and everyone here, I'd like to thank you all for coming. This is fascinating stuff, and we're going to just start marching into it. A couple things that I needed to do first of all was, says Brian, think before you speak so you don't embarrass the organization. Thanks, Bruce. I'd like to introduce the head table. To my left, your right, is Sheila Lund with First Security Bank. First Security also is responsible for printing a bunch of extra editions of the housing report, so if you see anybody from them, please thank them for that. Colin Bangs with Caldwell Banker Steinbrenner. And Louise Rock with Professional Property Management. Andrea Davis with Homeward. And Jim Sylvester with the Bureau of Business and Economic Research. Also not on the panel today, but who contributed significantly with the work is Nick Kaufman from WGM Group. And George Masnick is a well-recognized demographer who contributes to Harvard University's annual report in the state of Montana. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Sheila Lund. Oh, Colin Banks. I messed up, Ruth.
There was a mixed bag in 2008 in Missoula. It was the poorest year we've had in this decade and the poorest year we've had in a long time. But the mixed portion of that is it was still much better than most of the rest of the nation. If you look at this first table, and you can follow along if you want in your book, this is table 1 on page 3. This shows the annual sales and the median price change and the percentage of change. And you will see that if you start on the left-hand side, this is really some of the worst news we have is that the number of sales has dropped substantially. If you look at the 2006 level of 1,586 sales down to 1,385 in 2007 and 994 in 2008, that's a 37% drop from the sales in 2006 to 2008. So 40% of the business for realtors went away in the last 2 years. The one place that will look worse as we go on forward is the number of building permits. For the new housing, took even a bigger hit than housing in general. On the other hand, if you look at the other side, in a time period when a lot of prices were dropping dramatically across the country, 2007 actually went up, as you knew from last year's report, and 2008 went down, but only by 2.12%. That is minuscule compared to the rest of the nation. This next figure just shows you on a bar graph how it worked out. A steady climb in prices and then a slow downtrend in 2008. And looking at median price national comparisons, you can see that most of the country went up probably more dramatically than Missoula in the early 2000s and then leveled off 2005, 2006 while we were still growing, dropped considerably in 2007 and then more again in 2008. So we've had, it took longer for the price decreases to catch up in Missoula, and it's been much smaller than the rest of the country. This shows the numbers of houses sold in Missoula. So you can see it really is a dramatic drop-off. 2008 is the lowest in the decade in terms of total houses sold. We're now on page 4, figure 3. And looking at homes sold, the national comparison, I'll just look at the top line, which is the national. Their drop has been similar to ours, but the difference is their drop in terms of total numbers sold, their drop started in 2005 and took a slow coast down to 2008, where we kept growing until 2006 and then dropped off in 2007 and 2008. And there will be more later. Now I'd like to introduce Sheila Lund to talk about the financing. Save that to get the next one.
Okay, so I gotta lower this a little bit. The conventional year-end rates for 2008 were down considerably from what they had been during the year. And this is on page 7. It is figure 10. With the help of the economic stimulus package in 2008, we were assuming that we would have some boost in our activity, which really didn't happen much with that last tax credit that was developed. Then I'm going to go to page 8, figure 11, which I think is what a lot of people have been concerned about and interested to see what the foreclosure rates have been. You hear more information that pertains to the national foreclosure scenarios than what you see in Missoula, and you can see that it is substantially higher in 2008 than it was even in 2007. But the increase in the foreclosures represents only a little more than 0.5% of our market's total owner-occupied stock, which I think is very important for people to realize. And then if you look at the figure 12 that shows the bar graph with the fourth quarter of 2008 is where the foreclosures really spiked. But what hasn't really happened, and it doesn't show in here yet, is that some of the cancellations that were, or that could occur still yet into this quarter of '09 are not reflected in this bar graph. Because if somebody filed foreclosure on a homeowner in the last quarter, that doesn't necessarily reflect the possibility of it being canceled. So you need to take that into consideration when you're looking at the information under the foreclosure section there. And I suppose most of you know that the primary reason for some of the difficulty with homeowners getting financing is with the products and the possibilities of what we would have considered creative financing or alternative options are not readily available. The cost for homeowners regarding their credit scores, loan to values, those types of indications are considered loan level pricing adjustments. So the cost of somebody getting into a home is now more expensive, and that actually started in December of 2007. And Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have actually raised the bar on those costs and those qualifications 5 times since December of 2007. So that is another reason why it's harder for people to get into homes, is because there's additional costs that they didn't have before.
And I'm Louise Rock with Professional Property Management. Last year when we did the housing report, we found what was greatly lacking with the information that we had in regard to rentals. And what we've done through the Western Montana chapter of the NARPM, National Association of Residential Property Managers, is began a reporting system between the property managers who are members of NARPM. So what you will see here for the first time are actually rental prices in Missoula. This is a cross-section of about 8,000 units in the fourth quarter of 2008. So you can see the prices stair-step, obviously dependent on the type of unit that they are. And it seems that rental houses have been the slowest to rent, with the higher rental prices recently. The next slide that we'll see will actually be the fourth quarter vacancy rates that we came up with, again with the cross-section of the 8,000 units that were represented. What our goal is next year, now that we have the property managers reporting, is to also try to get more of the individual property owners to report, as well as rent-restricted units, homeward units, Parkside Village units where there is that rental subsidy involved. And in general, the vacancy rates for the fourth quarter for houses were about 5.5%, duplex units about 3%, multiplex units about 4%, although you'll notice that the two-bedroom multiplex units had the highest vacancy rate in the multifamily area. So the reason we feel that it's very good for us to be able to provide this information is from the investor or builder standpoint, it may not be a good time to invest in or build two-bedroom units. So, and I also wanted to share with you the February figures for the vacancy rates because it is the most current information that we have. And generally in a rental market, if you are between a 4 to 6% vacancy rate, you have a strong market, and we do very much in Missoula have a strong rental market. You don't have this slide in front of you, but the February reporting that we did through NARPM, houses, the vacancy rate averaged 4.2%, duplex units 4.8%, multiplex units 3.8%, which is very interesting because the two-bedroom multiplex units in February were down to 4.8. Good news. And mobile home across the board vacancy rates are 3.8%. So, and with that information, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Andrea Davis with Homeward, who will talk about the status of rental assistance.
Hello, my name's Andrea Davis, and as Louise mentioned, I'm with Homeward. I'm actually here to present information that was provided by the Missoula Housing Authority. Also, as Louise mentioned, organizations like ours that develop and own affordable rental housing that's rent restricted was not necessarily reported into the NARPM numbers this year, mostly because I think Homeward might be the only member at this point, but we are seeking out that information from other property owners that are develop low-income housing tax credits or other rent restricted. So that what I mean by that is it's not subsidized, but the rent is affordable. So looking forward to next year, we should see those numbers in this report. That'll be exciting. So on rental assistance, the Missoula Housing Authority reported that it has 754 Section 8 vouchers, and there is a waiting list of 1,079 families. The year-end waiting list for public housing, and that includes public housing and Section 8, provided by the Missoula Housing Authority is 1,410 families. Waiting list for homeless persons, the single room occupancy, meaning that it's basically a studio, 138, and homeless families, 171. What I'd like to point out in regards to those numbers is that they are increasing. What we have seen is that with the economic downturn, folks are basically losing their housing through eviction or not being able to pay their rent as often because of losing their employment. We are noticing an increase in homeless families who are not your typical chronic homeless that you would expect to see on a poster, I guess. You know, your guy with the old man with a paper bag and a bottle. But homeless families that are losing their housing due to lack of income. Anecdotally, I can tell you that we've had some challenge finding qualified tenants that can pay rent-restricted housing rental rates. So what I meant by that earlier is we have a rent-restricted affordable housing, low-income housing tax credit. They need to meet a certain income qualification, but they need to make enough money to make that rent. And we've seen more and more challenging applications, folks with less income and less ability to pay that even affordable rent. So I look forward to being able to provide that in next year's report. And with that, I would like to introduce Jim Sylvester to present demographic trends.
Well, I'm only going to talk about one demographic trend that is very significant. For the first time in 20 years, more people moved into Missoula County from Ravalli County than went the other direction. This chart here. I'm not sure which page it's on, but it's the orange line. You'll see it's all before, slightly above in 2006. 2007 is substantially above. I expect in 2008 it's going to be even farther because the data here didn't reflect the gas prices that we had last summer, and I kind of expect in the future. In the past, migration to Ravalli County, people moved there for lower housing costs. That's no longer true, as the median sales price for northern Ravalli County home is higher than Missoula, $250 versus $215. So this is a big change over the last 10 years. So, and now Colin's going to finish this up.
Talk about lot sales and new construction. Page 10, Table 5. You will notice that the lot sales dropped dramatically between 2007 and 2008. And before that, you'll notice it grew dramatically between 2006 and 2007. But let's get a little background on this. One of the reasons the lot sales weren't higher in 2004, 2005, 2006 especially, were that the lots weren't available. Most of the lots that were developed by people like Dave Edgell and myself who built houses on them and didn't have lots for sale. There weren't a good supply of lots on the market for sale to spec builders that wanted to buy, or for individual people that wanted to buy a lot and hire a builder to build a house. Those lots finally came available in 2007, just before the demand for them went away. So the lot sales jumped dramatically in 2007, dropped back just as dramatically, or even more so in 2008. The price range, median price actually went back up a little bit in 2008, and that's a reflection more upon the size of the lots being sold than anything else. There were a number of subdivisions that came out in 2007 and sold out that had very small and fairly inexpensive lots. Those are virtually all gone now, so you're back again to selling a little bit larger lot at a little bit higher price. But the lot sales have dropped off dramatically. And the building permits is where the biggest single drop has shown up in our statistics. And I'm going to concentrate on the single family, the left-hand column there. This is on page 10, table 6. If you look, the single-family housing building permit peaked at 2005 at 451 lots, or 451 building permits, dropped off to 310, 293, to 186 in 2008. So single-family houses dropped more than 50% in terms of total number of houses being built. So the people that are in the business of building primarily single-family houses, and the subcontractors and the plumbers, the electricians, the excavators, et cetera, are probably one of the largest reasons that you're seeing, or one of the primary reasons seeing increased unemployment in Missoula over the last few months. It's a very dramatic drop. We don't know whether it's going to stay down that low or not, but it's a very, very telling statistic. One caution I would give you on this table is don't pay too much attention to the cost of construction, because that's not true cost of construction. This is a formula that the building department uses to determine how much building permit they should charge you, and it is not necessarily accurate in any way, shape, or form. It's just a matter of so many dollars per square foot. So that all that tells you really is how big the houses were. It doesn't tell you how much they really cost. So housing affordability, moving on. This is back on page 16, table 8. Housing affordability is put out a number of years ago by the National Association of Realtors. It's an attempt to be able to look at any market and track affordability. How has affordability gone up or down? And of course, every market has different income, different housing prices, et cetera. So they had to have some type of formula you could use in any market. And this basically is a formula they use using housing prices, available financing, and the median family income. And the question we're trying to get out to is that what percentage of income does a median family income have compared to what income they would need to buy a median family house? And you can take a look at a family of 4, and You can see it started out down 98, 99. This is small enough that I can't see it either with my glasses from back here or without them down here. And from peaking in 2004, I believe, as a 101, it has slowly but surely gone down. The affordability has gone down. That meaning that a medium family of 4, and take into consideration that a lot of our families are 2 or 3 or single person families, only had 77% of the income they needed to buy a medium family house. We don't have the figures yet for income for this year. One of the reasons for giving the housing report for 2008 in March of 2009 is that the statistics are usually mostly here. Well, these aren't yet. They are almost always out in February. This year, they're not going to be out for about 2 more weeks. So what we did is we went on, and went ahead and, whoops, I'm not finding what I'm looking for here. Whoops. We went ahead and projected out what it would have done in 2008 on the assumption that the income did not change, which is not probably a valid assumption, but it's the only assumption we could use. So given the fact that the median family price dropped just a little bit, and that interest rates dropped again, it means that the affordability in Missoula has gone back up. So now your 4-person household probably has something a little bit over 80% of the income that they would need to buy a median price house. A 1 or 2-person family is really scratching the bottom of the barrel trying to find something to buy in Missoula's market. So, and here we have a percentage of income spent on housing. This is on page 17, and it shows homeowners and renters, different age groups. And you can see that as people get older, in general, the amount of money they spend, the percentage of their income they spend on housing goes down, with the glaring exception of the renters over 65 years old. So when you see such things as we saw coming through the legislature this year was going to give a tax break to homeowners over 65 years old, we looked at this statistic and sent a message back saying, wait a minute, thanks for the birthday present, I'll be 65 this year, but no thanks. We're not the people that need it. The people that need tax breaks, if you're going to give it to somebody, is going to be the homeowners in the lower price range, or even more importantly, the renters in all of the price ranges. Statistically, they say that you shouldn't spend more than 35% of your income on housing. You can see in this chart that the only people that spend less than 35% of their income on housing in Missoula are the homeowners from 35 years old on up. Everybody else spends more than they should have to for housing in Missoula. So it's a continuing problem and will continue to be a problem from an affordability standpoint. So the one other last part of it is a conclusion and outlook. And I will give you a conclusion, but no outlook. The conclusion is that it's been a tough year. It's not been a year that anybody in Missoula real estate is going to look back on with fond memories, probably, unless 2000 and 2009 and 2010 get worse and makes us look back to 2008 with wishing it had been more like that. But still, if you look at the nation as a whole, we've done great. The average price decrease around the country is 25%. We had the first drop. This was between 2005 and 2008. Between 2005 and 2007, we climbed steadily and then only dropped off 2.1%. So we're doing great as far as that goes. Our foreclosure rates are way down. We don't have the extreme problems they do in the rest of the country. If the economy turns around, as some people say it is going to, we will be better off, and we'll have missed most of the really bad part of this housing bust. There are some indications, there are some things coming forward that should help us this year. On the other hand, there are some things coming forward that are not going to help us this year. That's why there's no real conclusion or no outlook as to what the end effect will be. The the tax credit, which is a true tax credit this time, you don't have to pay it back, $8,000 tax credit for first-time home buyers, is bringing more activity to the market. We've seen that already. We've seen buy-sells already. We've seen a lot of new showings because of that. We expect that to bring along a burst of sales in the lower end, the first-time home buyers, which will free up those buyers to go buy something, and it should free up the market there somewhat. On the other hand, there is still a huge lack of mortgage money for anything over $400,000, the jumbo loans as they call them. You either can't get them or they cost a lot more to get than a standard mortgage. And there are still a lot of people who would like to buy a house that no longer qualify as the mortgage qualification standards go up and up and up. Fortunately, FHA and VA, FHA especially, is taking up more and more slack in that line. The other thing, other than jumbo loans, that is holding the market back, going to hold the market back, is that there won't be near as many people coming here from someplace else when their property values have dropped 25%. They're less likely to be selling out in California and coming up here with a large pocket full of money to buy something that costs a third what they sold down there, comparable house. So I don't have any projections, just that this is what it was in 2008. And now we're available for questions. And Ruth has the microphone. If you want a question, raise your hand. Ruth will bring the microphone so they can capture it on MCAT. Right?
Questions?
Yes, I was wondering about mortgage insurance, how that's affecting the selling of lower income property for people's mortgage rates and their monthly income.
That's loud, sorry. The private mortgage insurance premiums have gone up, and we have experienced rate changes and underwriting qualification changes very frequently. For the most part, we have, there are probably 8 active PMI companies now in the U.S., and 2 of them that I would say a lot of lenders in our area use, which is Radian and Genworth. Genworth is the private mortgage insurance company that underwrites for and insures the Montana Board of Housing conventional program. Those 2 companies both have Missoula County now on a declining market, which means you have to have 5% down more than you would have, so a 10% down payment. The credit score qualification is at 680, so it's not very attractive, and that's why when you're looking at somebody that doesn't have a 20% down payment, the FHA or possibly VA would be a better option for them, because then their payment would possibly be lower, because the mortgage insurance with HUD is only 0.55%, where some of the conventional PMIs are close to 0.90 per month.
A follow-up for Sheila on that. With Genworth considering Missoula a declining market, is there any way that it's possible to get that changed?
Well, they look at different vehicles, I would say, there's probably about 6 different agencies that provide them with that information based on, sales prices, foreclosures, all of that. And those are all, I would say, not reachable for us to even consider, tapping into that to provide them with information. I mean, I can tell you that they are trying their best very aggressively because they want the business. So if there is information that could be provided through the MOR office, just like when we try to raise our limits for FHA, I mean, I think we just need to keep our eyes and ears open and provide as much information as possible. But those people, you really don't have any contact with them, and that's the unfortunate part.
Any other questions? Colin?
I just have one other final thing, is that one piece of good news for the people that in the renter category is that tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock will be the groundbreaking ceremony for the Missoula Housing Authority's latest construction. We'll be building 37 units in 3 buildings on Catlin Street, just north of the Good Food Store. It's part of the large Intermountain Lumber site that we've owned for too long. So that's 37 units, but it's just a drop in the bucket, but at least it's a drop. So come to the opening tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you to the panel. Thank you for coming.